Hi everybody, we're back with the third video in our series. Today we're going to be talking about extracurriculars and things that don't fall under the core subject heading. First thing I want to say, I said it in the other two videos, if you are new to homeschooling, please go to hslda.org for legal advice on how to homeschool. I'm not a lawyer, I cannot give you legal advice, but that is where you will find the requirements and regulations for your particular state, what your state expects you to teach, and the subjects that are required, or testing or paperwork that needs to be filled out in order to homeschool your children legally and properly. So we've already discussed in the previous videos chores, meal times, notebook organization for keeping your paperwork together. We have discussed the core subjects such as math, reading, grammar, writing, spelling, handwriting, science, American history, and world history. All of those core subjects you're going to find in a previous video. I'm not going to discuss any of them here because of time constraints. Today we're going to be talking about music and art, drama and dance, maybe some choir, PE, health tips for teaching your children health. We're also going to discuss some tips for making your day, for how to judge whether or not the children are actually learning what you're presenting to them, and some things to do with pre-K kids. So let's just jump right in here, and we're going to start with music. Now, everything that I put together for my children, I prefer to do on a timeline. So whatever history we're studying, the science is going to go with it. The music and art are going to go with it as well, so that everything stays lined up and we're not jumping around to various time frames. So if you need a little bit of help with what your child needs to know, check out the book series, What Your Child Needs to Know. It will cover extracurriculars, not just the core subjects. It'll have things like music and art and all of that sort of thing to kind of give you a direction that you need to go. If you're not worried about keeping things lined up historically, I would suggest just going with composer studies. Or you can go by type of music, like classical music, rock, blues, pop, jazz, country music. Or you can go according to a specific country. So you can take a lesson and you can study American folk music, American and music that has been produced here. You can discuss music from India, from China, from Africa, Irish folk dancing, that sort of thing. You can go by region. Composer studies are pretty easy to come up with. There's a lot of different YouTube videos, which is the route that I would suggest going. If you have musical instruments, if you have a musical ability, if you have those things at home, that's a fantastic way to get your music into. I would suggest some sort of music history, because I feel that that's important for the children to know, and about where their own cultural heritage comes from, and about how there are some similarities between every country and the type of music that was produced, the type of instruments used, why they use those instruments and not others. And it's just a really great foundation for understanding music and how music is shaped by our culture, by our beliefs, by the things that were happening around us. So if you have an instrument that you know how to play, or your child already knows how to play, go ahead and continue with that. You can also teach the younger kids. They need to know different instrument types. They need to know orchestra versus marching band versus jazz band, one-man band. That's always kind of fun to study. You can get them into doing a game called Whack-A-Note, which will just kind of get them familiar with what a music staff looks like. It's not for teaching how to read music. It's just a little basic game to sort of give them the idea that a staff has purpose. You can go even farther into teaching music if you have that basis. If you don't, it's a fantastic thing for both you and your kids to learn at the same time. There's a lot of online resources for that. You can also do programs. Flow Key is a really great program for learning how to play piano, but it does require a computer, hooking a an electronic keyboard up to your computer in order for the program to actually work. But it is fantastic. My kids just love it. It does require a fee to be able to access that. I find that it's reasonable and it is well worth our investment to put into that. But if you have other options, like somebody local that can teach your child how to play piano or any other instrument, college kids are really great for that because they always need a little extra money, especially if they are a music major going into education. It kind of gives them a little bit of practice in learning how to teach one-on-one lessons before they are required to do that in their own classes. It gives them a little more experience with teaching. They'll probably charge you a fee for it. So that's a good way to go. It benefits a lot of people. You can also do programs like Rocksmith. Check into those and what platform they require. Some of them are like Xbox. I don't know if it's for PlayStation. I know that there's one for PCs. Just you'll have to do a little research according to what you have at home and what you're comfortable having in your home. So that is my suggestion as far as music goes. You can also get in with local groups, local music community bands. That's the word I'm looking for. Community bands. They will. I don't know that they necessarily teach lessons. I'm sure that some of them do, but it is a good experience for having that group environment to play music in. Let's talk about art a little bit. Don't be intimidated by art. A lot of times people have gotten the idea in their heads that when they were younger, I'm not good at art. I can't draw. I can't paint. I'm not good at art. Maybe it's just the experience that you had when you were younger. But I believe that everybody can learn how to make some sort of art. It doesn't have to be drawing or painting. You can learn how to make clay sculptures. You can learn how to do embroidery or basket weaving, or go ahead and jump into learning how to draw and learning how to paint. I would recommend the book Drawing with Children. Or we have a lot of fun. We turn Bob Ross on and I give the kids acrylic paints just on some regular typing paper. And we have a blast pausing the video and painting along with Bob Ross. You don't have to have all the supplies that he has. It is the process that you're going through, not the final end product. Eventually the end product will get there. It's learning the process behind these things. You can do watercolors. You can do pastels. You can do chalk. You can do oil pastels. There's a fly buzzing me today. You can learn how to do comic books. You can learn how to slab build with clay. It doesn't necessarily have to be pottery where it's got the big wheel and you're building up a clay pot. You can do slab built things where you just kind of like, I don't want to say playing with Play-Doh because Play-Doh is more malleable, but you can learn how to build things that don't require the pottery wheel. Or you can build sculptures out of clay and do claymation. You can do photography. You can do chalk drawings. There's an online game that's called Lego Quest. And you go on there and they give you an adventure. They give you a Lego sculpture that you have to complete. It'll be something with wheels, something that's red, something that's teeny tiny, something that's great big. It just depends on what the challenge of the day is. Or you can even go so far as to try to do something like Lego animation. Tie that in with your literature studies and have your child put together a Lego animation of the Iliad and the Odyssey or something else that they have read during that day. That'd be a fun challenge for them. Art history is also important. You can base that on your historical timeline for whatever you're studying, or you can do it geographically, go by country, or you can just pull a random artist out of the hat and go with that and just do a really nice artist study. For us, YouTube is an invaluable resource when it comes to studying different artists and different composers, and a really great way to expand on the art history and the music history is whatever time frame or whatever geographical region that your child is studying, while they're doing their lesson, if they're writing a report or reading a little bit or doing a coloring page, a lap book page, something like that, pull up on YouTube a video that has music from ancient India and art from ancient India. There are tons of them out there where people have already put those things together, and it'll put up images of artwork from that area or that time period and play some of the traditional music that goes along with it. It's a really fantastic enrichment for your history lessons, and you can count that as a history and a little, if you're discussing the composers, you're discussing the musical instruments that go with it, there you have your music and your art history all in one encompassing lesson. So that's the way that we tackle it a lot, and that's my recommendation for you. You can also sometimes find local artists who will teach lessons. 4-H groups will sometimes have those in. Boys club, girls clubs, what is it? Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts, that kind of thing. You can get in with them, and sometimes they'll bring in a guest artist or a guest musician to introduce those concepts. Okay, so drama. If your child is into drama, go with the local theaters. A lot of them will hold auditions. Some of them will teach drama classes. I can give you some recommendations if you're from the Jonesboro, Pocahontas, Paragould area. I know of one recommendation up here in the Springfield area. I'm not as familiar with that, but if you would like that information, go ahead and send me a message. The same thing for dance. Dance is a little bit easier to do at home. It's hard to do drama at home unless you have, a whole bunch of kids that want to get together and write their own play, which is not impossible to do. You can get several families together for children that are interested in it. Start a little home theater group that gets together. They can write their own plays, or maybe they can get a script from somewhere, and then they have to work together for scenery and costumes and practicing, and then they can put on a little play at the end of the year or whenever for the parents to enjoy. So you get together with other homeschool groups or other parents that are doing virtual schools as you feel it's a safe environment, and let the kids experiment with that. It doesn't have to be a community-wide thing. It could just be something small just to give them the experience and have a little bit of fun with it. Dance is the same way. Like I said, YouTube is invaluable for studying the arts because you can find so many instructional videos on there. You can find ballet warm-ups. You can find clogging lessons, hip-hop lessons. Those are really, really great. I wouldn't recommend trying to learn how to swing dance on your own. That might be a little more dangerous. If you want some recommendations for a local area, again, Paragould, Pocahontas, Jonesboro, I can give you those. I don't have any in the Springfield area. I'm sorry. I'm not familiar with this area as much. You can also check out chooseyourownaradventure.blogspot.com, .wordpress.com. Oh my gosh, I had it written down. It's out of my head. It's David's website that he put together for online art lessons. It is still under construction in some areas, but he has a lot of instructional videos up there that are really fantastic. And I know he's going to give me a hard time about not remembering which platform he's on. Oh, I'm so sorry. Choir. If your child likes to sing, if you are familiar with the rudiments of teaching people how to sing, you can do that from home. Yeah, I'm sure you can find, once again, instructional videos on YouTube, online, or if your child is involved in a church group or a drama theater group, or once again, college students that are willing to give lessons, that's a very fantastic way to go. Here at home, we don't do choir so much, but we do study different types of singing, in that we have, I just turn on the radio and I teach the kids how to project their voices, how to breathe. We kind of have our own little choir. There's so many of us. It's a lot of fun. Okay, so let me flip on over here to PE and health. Health I tend to lump in with science because we study the human biology and how to keep our bodies healthy along with the science lesson, the science biology lesson. So I tend to put health lessons in with biology and not have it as a separate thing. PE, you can do that very well at home. You can do biking, you can do family walks and hikes, time outside, swimming. If your child is involved in organized sports or community or homeschooling, In some areas, you can do that through the school still. I think that you can do that. You'll have to go in and talk with the administration and get your child signed up for it, but I'm fairly certain most school districts will allow homeschool students to come in and help to fill out their sports teams and their band and all of that sort of thing. You have to double check with them and see what they require first, because some school districts will allow the child to come in and do the extracurriculars. Some of them want them to take a couple of classes on top of that. It just depends on the school district, so you need to double check your own area and see what's going on with that. You can also do more organized things outside of the school district, like ballet, gymnastics, martial arts. There are a lot of different dojos in the area. I can give you a couple of really good recommendations if you want that in the Republic area. Republic Martial Arts Academy is a really great one. There's one in Aurora, Aurora Martial Arts. There are a lot more in the Springfield area, but I have no personal experience with them, so I'm not going to recommend them. But I definitely seek out some of the areas. Some of the gyms, they're really great about, if they don't have a children's program built up yet, they can direct you to one. Or if you go up to a bigger city and inquire about it, they probably know one that is closer to your own hometown in a smaller location. And a lot of times they'll send you there, because the gyms they're like families to each other most of the time, and they like to share business. They like to share their experience. They'll do seminars and travel around, and that's another great way to meet people who have the same interests that you do. There are also some organizations that are branch out from those, that women's martial arts, self-defense classes, that sort of thing, lessons for both children and for adults. Sometimes they'll do women's only classes. So double check to see what is in your area. This is not a subject that I would recommend looking on YouTube for if you're wanting to do martial arts. You could probably do Tai Chi, you could probably do some yoga, maybe some karate forms. I'm not as familiar with that martial art, but you may be able to find those. But please make sure that you're doing these kind of things safely. Any sort of PE activity, make sure that you're doing them safely, okay? If it's something that needs guidance or needs oversight, don't try to do it by yourself. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is not something you want to be attempting at home by yourself with no experience and no guidance, okay? The same for swing dancing. You probably don't want to learn how to do swing dancing at home by yourself. You're going to need some guidance for that to know how to do it properly. A lot of gymnastics moves. You don't want to be learning how to do backflips on your own at home. You're probably going to get hurt, okay? You need some guidance with some of these things that are a little more physically out there, okay? For lack of a better word. So that's my suggestion. Be reasonable. Use some common sense. Don't say Heather said, oh, go learn these things off YouTube. Use your common sense. Ballet warm-ups are okay. Swing dancing probably is not, okay? Just do a little research and see what you can come up with. Other things that are not core subjects, religious studies. You can, if you attend church regularly, go ahead and count that. Make sure that your child can repeat back to you the lesson that they study and the songs that they worked on, because then you know for sure that they are learning what they're supposed to be learning and what it is that they're learning, to make sure that it aligns with your own values. But yes, I believe that you can count a church attendance or a synagogue attendance as an extracurricular time. Just make sure that you know that they're learning something. If you are not a religiously minded person, you can still do a religious study. You can do the different religions of the world. You can do Christianity, you can do Judaism, Buddhism, Islam, and Hinduism. You can study the ancient Greek religions if you want to. It is still good information for a child to know, even if you don't agree with any of the tenets, just because the children are going to run into those ideologies when they get out to be adults. They need to know that there's more out there than just one family's point of view. So we incorporate other religious studies in a historical context. As far as our own religious studies, I'll show you what we use here. We do a group study That's called Our Daily Bread. It's 365 lessons. We do this, everybody together. Each lesson goes with a specific date. And so this is what we do first thing in the morning. Now the children, because they're all on different levels, I have different Bibles that they use. The very little kids get the Read and Grow Picture Bible read to them. It has really fantastic illustrations in it, and you can find some of these online in black and white as coloring pages that they color after they're done with the lesson to as a record to show that you studied it. I read this to them when they're really, really little. Then when they get a little bit older, I move on to the Beginner's Bible. The stories are very simple and the illustrations are very simple, but it is a good way for them to learn how to study the scripture on their own without the words being too difficult. Now, sometimes I'll switch back over. If they're not quite ready to move on to an older kids one, I'll have them go back to this book because it's been a couple of years since they've studied it. But this time they read it out loud to me. So they are already familiar with the story. They're already familiar with the illustrations and how it goes. But the words are a little more difficult than the Beginner's Bible. It is a great way to get them going into scripture with the stories being just a little bit longer. After that, we move on to Salty's Kids Bible. I'm sure my siblings and my parents recognize this. I have a couple of different copies, one of them being my own from childhood. This is the complete Bible. It is, the stories are a little bit more simple language than what you would get with a traditional, like King James or an adult Bible. And this is what they'll be going through until they complete it. We just do one chapter a day for the children. And I don't do a group Bible reading because everybody's at their own level, and I want them to learn how to read scripture on their own. That's why we do the daily Bible, the daily bread book. And let me show you what they're going to move on to after they complete Salty's Bible. I'll grab it over here. Now, you know, I've talked before about TorahClass.com. I would recommend that if you're an adult that wants to continue your studies. It is a Hebrew roots lesson. They go through the Christian Bible scriptures, but they apply a Hebrew roots understanding of the ancient culture when the scripture was written and when things had happened. It goes along with the complete Jewish Bible. Now, this is Christian scripture from a Jewish perspective, and I highly recommend it. It goes back to the original Hebrew names for people and places. The books are in a little bit different order than they are in the Christian Bible because they more closely align with the Jewish study Bible, which for some reason I don't have in here. But I would recommend this along with your standard Christian Bible for better understanding for older teenagers and adults who wish to continue on their scriptural education. TorahClass.com is a really great way to go for that. Not appropriate for children most of the time. The concepts are adult. The scripture is adult. There are situations that they talk about in there, some of the relationships that I wouldn't consider that young children need to study. But yes, for adults, that's a great place to go. Okay, moving on. Languages. I know that some states require a second language for the older kids. I would love to have a copy of the Rosetta Stone. I think that would just be the perfect resource, but they are expensive, and I cannot spend the money for that. So we tend to stick with American Sign Language. Little bitty kids do signing time. You can find a lot of their stuff online, or you can go to liveprint.com. It will teach you true American Sign Language, not signed English. It is different. Okay, sign language, true American Sign Language has its own grammar and syntax, and it is important to know that in order to properly communicate with the deaf and hard of hearing community. You can get by with signed English very well, and a lot of the deaf community will understand that you are trying to learn and that you are trying to be able to communicate when it's not your primary language. But I feel that it is respectful and important to learn the grammar and syntax of any language that you're learning, including American Sign Language. So I would suggest Signing Time, Live Print. YouTube videos, once again, are really great for that. A lot of people learn signing through song, so you can look up different songs and find the signing for that. So otherwise, I don't have any suggestions for other languages because we haven't delved into that. If you have suggestions for that, I am open. I would love to have comments about different programs that you're using to teach your children other languages. Okay, other fun things that you can do if you want to get into logic, you can go with Science Detective, which is just little case studies that the children have to go with. You can go with the Thinking Toolbox, which teaches them logical reasoning and arguments. This is the Fallacy Detective. Those two go together. They are a series. They're really great. Things to avoid. I'm going to say this. I might make some teachers mad. Avoid Teachers Pay Teachers because they charge a lot of money sometimes for their packets. Homeschooling resources, for the most part, used to be free. Now everybody needs a little bit of extra cash, and so everybody's charging for their resources. My stuff will always be free. I won't charge for it. I don't like to spend a lot of money, and I want my information to be out there where people can access it and teach their kids without having to blow the budget. I also do not like to go through Pinterest because it's easy to get lost in there, and a lot of times Pinterest links back to Teachers Pay Teachers. It's also important to avoid distractions during the day. Do not have the TV or the phone or the computer on unless you're doing a specific lesson, because while in your head you think it only takes 30 seconds to check a message, it's super easy. Just keep scrolling through Facebook, through Pinterest, through your websites. Don't do that. Things to look for instead. If you are going to be online, go to education.com. They have worksheets that you can print out. You can go to starfall.com. It's $35 a year, but I find that it is well worth the money. Preschool through 3rd grade, I think. They're always adding more things, so I don't remember what grade they go to. Fantastic resource for the littles if you want to do a digital day. Teacher Monster to Read is a British-based computer game that teaches little kids phonics. The accent is sometimes a little bit difficult for my Southern American children to grasp, but they enjoy the game. ABC is also really great. I believe they have games going from 1st grade up to 6th grade, and the kids have a lot of fun with those. Or logicgames.com also has a lot of really fun little games that they can play if you want to do a digital day. So I'm heading up on almost 30 minutes now for this video. I'm trying to keep it at a minimum, so I'm going to start talking really, really fast. Okay, so my tips for the day. In order to teach, how do you know what they're getting in their heads? Talk about things. Talk about everything. If you're doing something, explain what it is that you're doing, why you're doing it, and how you're doing it. You can teach through conversation. If you are changing the oil in the car, explain to them what they're doing. Don't just say, I'm working on the car, because the kid already knows that. They can see that you're working on the car. What are you doing? How are you doing it? Why are you doing it? Why does that thing work the way it does? That concept goes with everything that you do around the house. We're going to explain what we're doing, why we're doing, and how we're doing, and they're going to learn about it. And then if they can explain it back to you, that's even better. You know that they understand it. No baby talk. Don't dumb it down. You don't have to use technical scientific terms for things, but don't dumb it down. Kids understand a whole lot more, and their vocabulary will increase so much better if you don't dumb your message down. Okay, if you have a very little child, don't engage in baby talk. It takes them longer to learn how to speak properly because they're having to rearrange their brain once again to learn how to speak. No baby talk. If you have an infant, talk to them all the time. Carry them with you, talk to them, explain what you're doing. They're going to hear how our language is put together. They're going to learn the rise and fall of conversation. They're going to learn vocabulary. They're going to learn how to talk a lot sooner. And that makes it easier because then they can communicate with you and they'll be a lot less fussy when they get older. Just remember, everything is a lesson. If you do something, write it down. When they work on it, write it down. If they're helping with the yard work, fixing the car, sewing, if they go on a field trip, if you're outside playing and you discover a new butterfly and you want to discuss that, write it down. That's a lesson. Okay. that it's a fantastic way to do it. You can include things like menu planning, letting them help with the budget, figuring out a grocery budget, price comparisons when you go grocery shopping, figuring out how much cat food the cat eats in a week. That's important things for kids to know when they get out in their own house. They'll have that capability to keep track of their own household management a little bit better and not be caught short later on when they've blown their budget, or when they suddenly realize that they needed cat food in the store is closed down. You know, these little things that go along with running a household are important for the children to learn how to handle responsibly before they're out on their own and they have to kind of figure it out or be tripping over themselves. Narration and demonstration. If they can explain it, if they can do it, they understand it. So don't think that they always have to sit down and do a written test. Sometimes, most of the time, the test can just be narration and demonstration. They can show you how to do it. They can explain how and why to do it. They understand it. You don't need a written test. Unless your state mandates that you need one. Follow those recommendations, those requirements for your state. Another advice, turn off the devices. You do not need your phone. You don't need those things distracting you. Trust me from experience, it's too easy. Yeah, you can go watch cartoons. No, everybody's going to get distracted. Nothing's going to go anywhere. Turn off the devices. Give them your complete, full attention. Save checking your device for when you're on break, and then put it aside. And remember that homeschooling is more than just textbooks at the table. It's a mindset that everything can be an educational opportunity, no matter what it is that you're talking about. Even something so simple as putting your contact in, brushing your teeth when you're talking with your little bitty kids. Why do you do that? Why is that important? How do you do it properly? Everything is a lesson. Books are important, but hands-on is really great. Let them make messes. Then you can tell them, you can teach them, you can make a mess, but it's important for you to clean it up when you're done. That's the big thing around our house. Yes, you can go do that thing. Yes, you can explore that. You can make that. You can create it. You can do a science project. But you have to clean up your mess when you're done. It is part of the teaching them responsibility to take care of their own things. Try not to fill every second of their day. Education happens all the time, but it doesn't always have to be formal. They don't need every second of their day filled. When the lessons are over, keep the TV and the video games turned off until the weekend. Trust me on this one. This way, they have to go and learn how to constructively occupy and manage their own time. It's okay for a kid to be bored, because then they learn how to be creative. They learn how to entertain themselves. But they're not allowed to complain that they're bored. If they complain that they're bored, you give them a wash rag and you tell them, go scrub the baseboards, go scrub the windows, go scrub the door. Don't tell me you're bored, or I'll find you something to do. Any kid at my house will tell you that. If they complain to me that they're bored, I give them a rag and tell them to go clean something. After a while, they don't complain. They just go and find some way to occupy their own time constructively. Books, projects, go outside, dig in the dirt, let them do things. They need downtime in order to be able to process what they've learned during the day, to recenter themselves, and to explore concepts on their own. It is super important. Don't fill their whole day. Let them have a little time to go and just be a kid. Okay. So the last bit of advice, I'm probably going to run through this really fast because my time is coming up on its limit. What do you do with your preschoolers when you're trying to do schoolwork with your big kids? What do you do with that preschooler? I'm going to say it again. I'm going to sound like I'm preaching. This comes from experience, okay? The worst thing you can do is to give them a device and tell them to go sit down, okay? YouTube videos on the phone, the tablet, the Kindle, it's easy to give it to them. You're going to run into problems when it's time for them to do schoolwork because they aren't going to want to. They're going to want to go and play on their computer. The best way to keep from having that struggle when they reach school age is to keep them involved in what you and your older kids are already doing. Yes, they're going to be under your feet. Yes, they're going to slow down your processes. It's okay for them to do that, because once they learn how to do these things and get into the mindset that we do things and it is okay to keep myself occupied, they're going to be more independent, and independent children are capable children. they're capable of going and getting their textbook on their own, or keeping themselves occupied. Or when I say, you need to be quiet right now, they can do that and not fuss at me. So my rule is that if they cannot be quiet, they have to go sit up on their bed, which means that they either end up taking a nap or they end up finding some way to occupy themselves by playing with their toys or their books. They have to go in the other room if they can't be quiet. They don't get to stay with everybody else. So it's going to be very, very difficult, especially it is for us when we're coming off of summer break, because we're used to having, the TV on or playing a game or whatever. I have to start breaking that habit now before we get into schoolwork, because when I say it's time to do school, they're not going to want to do it. They're going to be so used to just hanging out on their video games that they're not going to want to come and do school. It's the habit you have to break now. And it's probably going to take, a couple of weeks for them to get the idea that no, we are not playing on the game. We are not playing on the tablet. But trust me, it makes it a whole lot easier when you're not constantly fighting their attention to teach a lesson when they're wanting to reach for that video game. Okay, so the little kids, it's important for both big kids and little kids, but little kids especially, that this way they start to be interested in what the big kids are doing. Little kids love to do what the big kids are doing. They love it, especially if they're included in it. So the little kids will love to do school just like the big kids do. They'll be excited and ready to go to the table if they know that that's something that the big kids are doing and they get to be included in it. If they're always told, go play, go away, go play, they're not going to be interested in it anymore. They're not going to feel like they're a part of that, and they're not going to be interested when it's their turn to sit at the table and do it. So my suggestion is keep coloring pages on hand, dry erase boards, dry erase markers. They make books that you can write in that are dry erase. Storybooks, keep storybooks on hand. Play-Doh and clay, glue sticks and pieces of paper. If your kid can manage the pair of scissors, let them cut things out. Let them cut out little pieces of paper and glue it down. Let them cut out magazines and glue it down. No glitter. Trust me. I still have glitter stuck to my table that's been there for the last 6 years. Don't do glitter, okay? Save yourself the headache. But pieces of string are really great. Let them paint. Let them color. Let them use markers. My bunch have used markers since they could, Sharpie markers, since the day they were little. They know that they have to sit at the table to use those. They are not allowed to take them from the table. But then they feel special because they have big kid markers and they get to use them. It teaches them responsibility and they feel special. You can give them a little cup of water and a paintbrush and tell them to go paint the sidewalk. Give them a squirt bottle full of water and a rag and tell them to go clean something. Little bitty kids will think that's fun. Big kids think it's a chore, but little kids like it. Puzzles, simple puzzles for little kids, blocks, playing cards. Let them drag things out within reason. Let them have playing cards and blocks to roll their little tiny cars down. They'll have fun building a ramp. They'll sit and play quietly, or they'll join you at the table for a quiet lesson. As long as they're being quiet or participating nicely is what I'm saying. No fussing, no disrupting the lesson. They can stay down there. And then they'll start seeing it as a reward to get to do the lessons with the big kids, and that they are a big kid. Are you going to be a big kid and come downstairs and do schoolwork? Yeah, I'll come down and do schoolwork. They'll love it. They'll absolutely love it. You can also do little treasure hunts. Bring me something that's blue. Bring me something that's wheels. Bring me something that you eat. Bring me, just make it a treasure hunt. Name something. Bring me a sock filled with blocks or, something like that. They love to do that kind of thing, and they'll run back and forth and wear themselves out. Let them make creations. That's good. Let them get messy. They'll learn how to clean it up. And at the end of this whole day, you're done with your schoolwork, your formal schoolwork by about 1 o'clock. Make everybody lay down for an hour if you need to. They don't have to take a nap, but they have to lay down on their bed and they have to read a book or look at pictures in a book. And then Mama can sit and have that 5th cup of coffee that's actually hot, and you can check your email and you can breathe a sigh of relief, and everybody can regroup themselves after the school day and before getting started into their extracurriculars or their chores. So that is my recommendation. keep the kids involved, keep the devices to a minimum. You can tell that sometimes is a struggle for me since I harp on it so much. And don't sweat it. Don't stress about it. Every moment is educational, and it does not have to just be textbooks at the table. So I'm pretty sure that this wraps up everything I wanted to talk about. I hope that I got all the questions answered. So good luck with your homeschooling this year, and if you have any other questions, or if you want me to go more in depth on a specific grade, I will be happy to do that. Send me a message and let me know. It may be a couple days before I get the video put up, but I will go through the books that I use, the lesson times, kind of the pacing, and some of the projects that we handled for a specific grade, if that is what you would like to have. So give me a little time and I'll try and get that done for you. So yeah, any other questions, any comments, any suggestions? I'd be glad to hear it. We all enjoy a good discussion. Most homeschoolers will warm up and share their information if they know that they're not going to be harassed about it. Sometimes that happens, but that's okay. So we'll have a good discussion later on, and enjoy the rest of your day.